Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell, and welcome to another program on spirituality. Today in the studio, I'm excited to have as my guest Sister Giotto Moots and Tom Donnelly from Chicago, and we're all going to remember a mutual friend that has since gone on to join the alumni, Father Blaise Schauer, Dominican priest who established something here in Santa Fe years ago called the Liturgy in Santa Fe, and we wanted to bring that to your attention. So some of you may remember him, and we'll be wanting to call your friends and tune into this conversation. So welcome both Sister Giotto and Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to Sister Giotto for bringing us together, and then we found out we had something in common. And the Liturgy in Santa Fe was something that was established when? Does anybody remember exactly when Father Schauer moved to Santa Fe?
I should know, 69 maybe?
Okay, because he had
Yes,
been the...
I think it was 69.
I think he was a chaplain or...
He was Newman Center chaplain in Las Cruces.
In Cruces, at New Mexico State.
Right, and then he had some time in Gallup for a brief little
born
period.
in
Like
Gallup,
born
I
in
believe.
Gallup, but he went back to Gallup at some point, and then came to Santa Fe, and that was before I came, because I came in '77.
Yes. I think he tried to integrate with the Newman Center in Albuquerque.
Oh,
for a
was that
while.
the
I think
that was the interregnum period?
Right.
Where the Dominicans had held flow there for a while. But in any case, so we came to Santa Fe, and there wasn't much doing, say, liturgically speaking, at the time, and they decided there needed to be more richness in it.
Well,
is that correct?
the truth of the matter is that the bishop wanted to do something with those buildings up there. You know, the seminary buildings.
The minor seminary.
Yeah, for the minor seminary. And he actually, and what is the bishop before?
It was Archbishop Sanchez.
No.
Before
it was
Sanchez?
Before Sanchez.
Okay.
The one just before Sanchez actually offered me the buildings. And I said, thanks, but no thanks. I said, I have to start small and work, you know, big, but I couldn't just take over those buildings. I wouldn't know what to do with them. So Father Schauer said he would take them. And of course, there was good things and bad things with that. Didn't work out too well because the rector of the seminary at that time didn't know what to do in his position. Somebody else now had the buildings, but he didn't know what to do with the buildings either. So.
Well, he ultimately transformed the chapel into a more of a Southwest contemporary style.
That's right.
And he introduced, I think at the time there was not much use of the banners and the things and all the
That's
kind of
right. Oh,
accoutrement
yes.
to enrich the liturgy, which was his goal.
Right.
And Father Blaise was a sign that was contradicted because he
Right.
was both conservative and liberal. So he alienated both sides of
Well,
the
his
spectrum.
name was Blaise Schauer, too.
That's right.
And that was a sign being contradicted.
Indeed, yeah, Blaise and Schauer.
So he had the right name.
So
He did.
when did you meet Father Schauer?
I met Father Schauer when I had first come to Albuquerque, and I was in my parents' home. Mother and father were both living at the time, and someone from the Newman Center, I can't remember who it was, came to the door with Father Schauer and knocked on the front door of my parents' home. And he said, you should meet this man. You two should meet each other because you have a lot in common.
Well, were you Dominican still at that time?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Oh,
you were a
yeah.
Dominican
Oh, I
sister, and he
was-
was a priest, I forget
He
from
was
which
a
province,
Dominican.
from back
From St. Albert.
St. Albert's, in
Yeah.
Berkeley. Okay.
In Berkeley, right.
And what about you, Tom? When did you first meet Father
Well,
Schauer?
I was a student at St. John's, and I would wander down to the seminary, which was down the road from St. John's. It's right, you would go through the Arroyo
Exactly.
and up, and I heard the bell, so I figured there must be a Catholic Mass there. And so I would go to Mass there, and then they went away for break. So I didn't have any place to go to Mass, but they said, well, down the street, there's this liturgy in Santa Fe they were having their Mass in the Carmelite Monastery. And I'm knocked over the I'm an iconoclast, I guess. And so I met the First Liturgy in Santa Fe community, and they would have their Mass at Carmel on Mount Carmel Road, and then they would have, after Mass, we would go to a social hour at the Liturgy in Santa Fe property, which was 9 acres near Camino Lejo, at the end of Lejo.
Right near where the museums are.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, just beyond the museums, at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
There, and so I sort of got integrated, sort of first through Father Kent Bertner, and then I met Father Blaise, and we got together a group of St. John students who then decided to take a year off to help build the building for Father Schauer, the Heritage Hall, which was the home of Liturgy in Santa Fe for a number of years there. And so we took the summer off, and we were the laborers. Stan Davis Construction provided the contracting work. Stan Davis was another Gallup expatriate here in Santa Fe, and so he knew Father Schauer from growing up with him. And so they built the building, and we did the laboring work, hauling the mortar and putting the bricks.
And it was Calmine who did the design for it. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
just
it was
wonderful.
Beautiful. So, and then I stayed after college. I stayed for another 2 years working as an assistant to Father Schauer, along with another college buddy of mine, Joe Moore, and a couple of others who stayed around, Dan Pulzer and Jeffrey Rommel and Cindy Hopgood, and we all sort of worked there doing various things, putting on a program every night of the year on the liturgical calendar for 2 years. Every night we would go on, and there might have been 2 people in the audience or 20, but we would do something integrating cult and culture, which was his theme, was how art and religion were connected, that creation and creativity were somehow connected, which makes sense. But as a kid, I was like, all these connections, the sanctoral calendar, art, iconography.
I would come up and give a lecture once a week for Father Schauer, but he also came down to my place. I don't know if you knew that. He would come down to my place and give lectures for my students.
That was your art institute,
That was
Sagrada.
my Sagrada Art
In
Institute.
Albuquerque, Old Town.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, my connection was I lived around the corner from the Heritage Hall. I lived over on Conejo, and so I just wandered in there one day and no idea and didn't quite get it. And then Sister Teresita Scully, who had been a Carmelite, then turned Benedictine at Pecos when the charismatic renewal was in full swing, and then she came out after that. And then I was doing a project with her for the Department of Corrections, Community Corrections Act, and based on her doctoral thesis, which was diet affecting behavior at the state pen. We created something called the Health and Behavior Institute to provide programming. We weren't eventually successful as providers, but or we weren't picked. We were very successful, but they didn't pick us. And then from there, she introduced me. We used to go to daily mass with Father Schauer, and that's how I met him. And that's literally how I came back to the church, because I was out of the church at the time, and he came to be a close friend and extraordinary confidant.
Right.
Well, he had an extraordinary, he had 2 things that were just extraordinary about it. One was his vision, and the other was his person. And his person, when I worked there for 2 years, people would come in, all walks of life, and come in just to see him and talk to him. And trying to figure out what is so magnetic about this guy, this crotchety guy with a cigar, smoking all the time. And
who bangs his head against the wall.
Yeah, who's always sort of struggling against the life.
Everything.
But he really looked at you, and he was very attentive to each individual person in an extraordinary way. And that's such a rare thing, that once somebody falls into that that presence, so I'm heading up his, right now I'm going to start his campaign for his elevation to saint. These are the 2 other proponents, right? You're going to second the nomination. Of course. Because we had the experience of that. But the other was his vision. He just had this relentless vision of how things should be, like the name Heritage Hall, which was the heritage, the artistic heritage of Catholicism, was something he thought should be treasured. From Gregorian chant to Giotto's paintings to whatever it was, he thought we should treasure our heritage. And he insisted on that name for the hall. It wasn't Saint something or other, it was Heritage Hall, because it was centered around heritage. And he would just hold on tightly to certain ideas he had, and then you'd come around eventually. But at first you were like, why? Why do you want to do it? And he would just persist and hold on to it. Did I knock him over again?
Yes,
okay,
I think you did.
All right, but that was, that was his loyalty to his vision was extraordinary. in addition to his quality as a person and his presence to you?
I think he was able to see the other side of things, always, you know, which many people are not. They're kind of caught in a framework or in a way of seeing things, and that's the way they see it. But he could always see the other side. That was amazing about him, you know. And I think that's why he got along so well with artists and people of vision, because he himself could do it.
Yeah, he certainly appreciated it, because he inspired me in relationship to media, because he would then record shows. He'd tape them off their television, and then he would bring them out and be one of the programs at a future time. And that was something that I stayed with, too, in terms of bringing it out. I remember I had been a teacher before, and it was one of the reasons I bought a VCR at the time, was because you could get such wonderful programs that then could capture kids' imagination. You wouldn't have to do the preliminary content work. You would capture it there, that then give them some background in an area, whether with art or religion or spirituality or even history, and then show it to them, and then you could create a discussion after they'd all sit and seen that particular documentary or something like that. And I don't know where all those tapes are now, or even the banners. There was something about the banners that struck me, that he thought they were very important to capture people's imagination or help them get deeper into the liturgy. Can you talk to that about that?
Well, I think in the ordinary church, you don't have the priests who are educated in the arts. And so they really do not want a space for banners in their churches, because what are they going to do with this? And how are they going to find the artists? The artists are there, by the way. They're always there among the congregation. But, you know, I kind of finding them, sifting them out, where are they? And, but he saw that for every part of the liturgy, and he just loved the liturgy, you know, every aspect of it, you know, starting with Advent, and you have Advent, then you have Christmas, and then you go on, and you have Lent, and he just relished, like a good meal, you know, his
When he would do
liturgy.
crazy things, like we would have our Easter Vigil started at 4 a.m. so that the baptisms would be at sunset, or sunrise. So we'd have the sunrise would be, you know, so we all get up there at, 3 a.m. to get to church, light the Paschal fire, and everybody's saying, this is crazy. What is he doing? But of
Why
course,
at this hour?
it transformed it, because you were putting such enormous effort and you were doing things that, that were totally inconvenient.
Right.
Then you realized sort of the transcendent nature of the whole experience. If religion is undemanding, it isn't transcendent, it's immanent. And he had that sense of that you had to stretch people. He would always say that, stretch them. So
stretch them.
he would use Latin in the liturgy when people would say, well, why, we've just gotten the chance to use vernacular, why are you going back? And he was one of the pioneers in using vernacular, but as soon as everybody was using the vernacular, he was going back to using Latin at certain parts of the Mass. And of course it makes it difficult, but that's exactly what appealed to him, was that was
so
stretching you out.
Right.
That's
we
He's
keep
just
knocking
relaxing.
him down.
He's just relaxing. But it's true. But now I want to ask you about the effect he had on you today. I mean, he's been gone now for a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and then you've gone on to graduate school and law school, and now you're a judge in Chicago. So tell me how those experiences have stayed with you and helped shaped your adult life.
Well, prayer, he introduced me to the Liturgy of the Hours. So every day we would say morning prayer and evening prayer, which is the liturgy of the church. And his parting gift was give me the 4-volume Liturgy of the Hours. So I incorporate into my daily life now is on my train ride in, I pray the Office of Readings and morning prayer. On my train ride back, I do daytime prayer and evening prayer. And when I can, when my trials aren't squeezing it out, go to daily Mass. So incorporating that sense. The other things that still stay with me is we had prayer outside. When the weather was good.
And how he
when
loved Easter.
well,
Really.
but when he defined good weather in Santa Fe, it could be raining or snowing, but we'd be praying outside, because the connection for him between prayer and nature and beauty, that's the connection. When you talked about artists, for him to separate religion and beauty was the ultimate heresy. So because his background came as an artist, he first went to music school in Berkeley and then went on to graduate school in Columbia. You know, so he was, and sang with the Robert Shaw Chorale. So he was an artist primarily. And then it was through art that he came to faith. So that his faith came out of art. And that was the insight of his life. That was his vision, is it is through looking to beauty that we can come to goodness and truth. And that our society separates the two.
And it was so future. I mean, really.
Right.
That's the thing. He was the wrong time, I guess.
Well, somebody had to plant those seeds. And
somebody had to plant the seeds.
And ultimately, he only left here because he felt that he needed to influence the future liturgists, and that's when he decided to move it to the Graduate Theological Union at the University of California, Berkeley, and the School of Dominican Theology. And I remember we've all. Did you ever get to visit him there?
I visited when he was in Berkeley. But of course, they weren't interested in that.
Oh no.
They weren't.
They had no idea.
They had no idea.
Was.
And then I think, you know, I was quoting you that Robert Louis Stevenson quote the other day, is that if anything man was made for, it wasn't for success. You know, we're not supposed to be successful. And that's the misapprehension of this age, is that we're supposed to be successes. That's death, is success, because it isn't authentic. Authenticity comes from realizing who you were meant to be in the eyes of God, which doesn't have anything to do with whether people who will value it or not. They won't. You'll be a sign that's contradicted. And that's what he was. He was relentless about his vision and wouldn't compromise it. And so people weren't interested in that. But those who came, and I count myself among those, came and soaked in that and then took that. And so I take that and I use that with my kids, and they see that. So they see St. Blaise, I hope, through me. That I carry that forth. So that's in answer to your question of what you take out of that, and that's what you hope to be for other people, right? Is just that a moment. If you're for a moment with them, somebody, and you give them a moment, and they're able to see something about themselves through looking at their reflection in your eyes, then you've affected them for life, and that can be like that, but they'll be forever changed, and that's what he did to people, and we can do that for others.
Well, I guess I have to give him credit for Spirituality TV too, because you know, here I am, been doing this community television show for this one going to our 15th year now. So I like to tell people I'm at the very top of the bottom of television here in New Mexico. You know, so a handful of people probably see this at one time.
So congratulations, you went to success.
I am.
Kind of Blaise Schauer success.
Yeah. But I'd like to give the opportunity too, how he influenced you, Sister Giotto, in those ways.
Well, it's just very difficult, you know. I always thought that his vision could take place, you know, that we actually could come into that age, that people would value what he had seen and just relish it, that's all. Because he really did. And I certainly relished the liturgy as a result of him.
Right.
He made me see it in a different way that I hadn't seen it. And being a nun, you know, I'm right there with the liturgy every day.
But it was the passion he put into, for instance, his homilies. Having lived with him, he would read over the scriptures for the day, and then he would read a commentary, and he would pace back and forth in his office. And he'd try to hold on to those insights, those moments. And then when he would come out, and he wouldn't want to talk while he was preparing to getting on the vestments, because he was holding on to all those thoughts. And then it would come out in the homily, this sort of emotional moment that would build even during the Mass itself. Is you'd sense that the emotions were building during the opening prayer, during the Gloria, during the readings, the Gospel, and then it would come out in the homily. It would be just like, whoa. When he would preach on Jeremiah, his favorite one, oh, you've duped me, Lord. And he would talk about the feelings of being duped by God as a prophet, because he felt himself to be a prophet. He was a prophet. And he'd identify with Elijah. And he would become those people, because that was the art thing, is that he realized you could don that mantle and become that, and then people would see it. Because you had to be it for them to see it. And that was what he was about, because it came from art. he knew that art wasn't
Right.
false, it was true.
And
Everyone
beauty.
thinks art is putting
And
on.
beauty. It's,
Yeah.
You know, I say to people, you know, it took a long time to kind of separate goodness. What is goodness? What culture are you from that you think this is goodness? What is goodness, you know? And truth, the university systems. They took a long time. How about beauty? Let's give a little time to beauty. Wouldn't that be something?
And you can see where his Southwest influence, have been born and raised in Gallup.
Right.
I mean, the nichos that he developed for not only here in Santa Fe, but he took it to the Methodist church they took over
Right.
south of campus
Right.
in Berkeley, and created that same background, that motif that you know, you couldn't
That's
tell
right.
how much. It was more Native American, I think, than it was Spanish, but it was clearly there, and it felt like, I think it felt like it grounded him in some way, or brought that nature's beauty indoors. Would that be fair to say?
He still has influenced a lot of people in Santa Fe. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
certainly Santa Maria
Right.
and
De La
De La
Paz.
Paz would not be there.
Right.
if
Those
he hadn't
nichos
been
and
there.
stuff and that design was all
That
from
was
his
all
influence.
from Blaise Schauer, right?
Right.
I wonder if people realize that, if they still know.
Well, now they will. If they see this program, they'll, oh, that's where that came from in that sense.
Yeah.
And that building won an award when it was being built.
Sure.
Right across the street from where we're taping here for the community college. It's an award-winning building
Right.
that captures, I think, the best of Southwest art. I mean, that rear buttress, I think, that's reminiscent of the famous Rancho de Taos in Taos, and now
Sure.
this.
Yeah.
But he was, you know, very insistent on integrating that, the sense of the Santos and Bultos into liturgy, that it
Right.
wasn't to be a museum piece. And we'd have Peter Rivera Ortega come out and talk on this, and he and Father Schauer were like this because they understood this cult and culture, that the sanctoral culture of the Hispanic culture, the Spanish culture, was about integrating faith and life. And a historian like Peter Rivera Ortega and you know, an art historian understood that, and they understood that that's the tradition to carry on, not art as something of intellectual curiosity, but of informing your life and animating your life, not just a museum piece.
And near the end of his life, as we're getting near the end of this program, I'm trying to think of the lady's name who was there, very attentive to Father's needs. And I can see her now. She's a devout, I think probably a third-order Carmelite. I always see her at Mount Carmel
Right.
at her Mass. And
Basilia Lopez Villarreal,
I
who's
knew
another
you-
saint,
Basilia,
who I
she's
spent
indeed.
time in this visit visiting with
Good, I
Basilia.
was hoping you
Or
would.
did you?
Yeah, and
Good.
Basilia is from Las Vegas, New Mexico. Grew up in Las Vegas. Came down to Santa Fe to work in state government, and Basilia was talk about animating animated liturgy in Santa Fe, because without her it wouldn't exist. She was the one supporting it and supporting Father Schauer's work, and coming from the native culture and seeing the connection with her life was very important, I think, for her and for me. She was a very important person.
Yeah.
I think it's very important that at least for me, to be out in San Isidro, which is a basically Spanish community, and they have accepted me as blonde as I am. It's really white hair.
I-
You know.
And just down the road from the Jemez Pueblo, it's surrounded by Native
yes.
Americans too.
So I
Yeah.
take part in all their liturgies and their celebration, and I was able. I had enough money when I first went out there to remodel their entire church, you know, in the tradition of Father Schauer.
Wow.
I was able to gut it out, just took it all out. I couldn't do it today. It's just that there was a priest that was assigned there, Father Gino Carrera, who understood. You know, I did the drawings and everything for it, and I said, we can do it. He said, go for it. I said, what? No one tells me to do that. You know, so I did. I just gutted the church and redid it according to his
And also,
vision.
but your own inspiration in that of Father
Well,
Schauer, you
with him.
established the Morada de los Rosas, which is a
Yes.
prospective third-order Dominican for
for
artists.
this very reason,
Yeah.
for artists, you know. I'm just trying to find the particular way that I have to move in order to have this recognized and legitimized. So,
I imagine it was a fateful thing for you to come to St. John's and then meet him and then have it,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
influence
Oh,
your
yes.
life. It'll carry
Oh,
on.
yeah, it's just,
That's
and
good everything.
he is present with me every day I pray, you know, is that spirit. And it's other things, I mean, just sort of this vast riches, importance on meditation and contemplation. We'd read the Liturgy of the Hours reading, the Divine Office reading, and then there would be 5 minutes of silence. We could walk and meditate and think about it. And understanding the benefits of that as a young person was very important. That you're receiving ideas from God, that God speaks to you when you're quiet. It's such a revolutionary concept, you know, because Catholics are always babbling on and there's no time for silence ordinarily. And he said, no, you have to be quiet. And that was true in the liturgies. After the first reading, there was silence and time to absorb it, which is what you need. But no one else does it, because we're all trying to get on with the next thing and move it along. Just get the input, get out. And he had a whole different sense of what liturgy was. It included the silence.
And his influence, I think, is widespread, because I remember he influenced Teresita Scully, who then became the DRE at the St. Francis Cathedral, and when the Franciscans were there, and she introduced a lot of different changes to enrich their liturgy.
That's right.
And then others, you know, have carried on with that. I know Monsignor Jerome has really made it, you know, a much more upgraded, you know, reaching out to the people form of liturgy at the cathedral. It's night and day from, you know, for when the Franciscans were there. But they embraced it as well. I mean, they realized, I think. So it's funny, those who perhaps weren't as appreciated during their time, it's an opportunity for us to really to get together and just reminisce and to tell the folks at home, remind them at home that they're some of the people that we maybe don't appreciate today, may be the big influences in our lives later, and to perhaps have a little more compassion for ourselves and them in our daily activities.
He blazed the trail.
He blazed.
He did. That's right.
You know, Father. Okay, we just got a couple minutes left. Is there anything else anybody would like to share with us in this last minute here?
Well, I just have those few last years with him in Berkeley, which were very important. It was very hard to see him feel that he was disappointed, just very disappointed in what he was able to do, and that was it.
But, you know, he had that insight. I mean, he always preached on Good Friday that we worship a failure. That in terms of, he understood that insight, and he understood that the prophets, that the fact that you're not heard doesn't mean you should stop shouting. and he understood that. Now, it was always difficult, because he was always disappointed that he wasn't heard. But he knew that that was the Christian mission, was to be a failure, to attempt, to try, to stretch, to witness to something beyond what everybody would accept or wanted. And that's an important thing to hold on to in your life, because if you're, you know, beware of when they all speak well of you, they treated the false prophets the same. Was his favorite quote, is that if people are treating you well, you know you're doing something wrong. Okay. Which is a good insight to hold on to in life.
Well, we're going to have that at the last one. We've run out of time, but it's been great to have you, Sister Giotto, and Tom Donnelly, come here and share this memory. So thanks for coming out to be with us and to inspire us to get together. We hope that this has been of some value to you in your life, and that we'd love to hear from you. Please watch the credits and contact us. If you have any ideas for future programming, we'd like to know what you'd like to see. So I'm Bill O'Donnell. On behalf of everybody here at Spirituality TV, our director Marshall, and all the folks behind the scenes, I want to thank you for viewing, and stay tuned next week at this time for another program on spirituality.